All right, well, hello everyone and welcome to the Web Strategies webinar series for credit unions. I'm Chris Leone and we're so glad that you could join us today because we are going to continue a conversation that we started, I don't know, maybe 6-8 weeks ago on the hottest technology that we've seen in the digital world, maybe probably ever, almost certainly ever. I'm going to say ever, and that is generative AI. And joining me today to contribute to that conversation are Emily Forth-Huber and Caroline Prettyman. Emily is one of our senior client success managers, and Caroline is our senior manager of HubSpot strategy. If you joined our webinar a couple weeks ago, these faces will be very familiar to you, and I'm happy to have you guys back. I'm looking forward to geeking out on this stuff, as I always am. So we're going to talk about a lot of the exciting developments that have happened in this space since we last did this webinar. There have been a lot of really interesting things coming out, advancements in the tools that we all already know, like ChatGPT, what Google's up to. They're doing some really fascinating things that could shift some user behavior. What other industries are doing to experiment with this technology that we hope and think will inspire the way credit unions can leverage this technology, and a lot of other goodies mixed in. All right, we're going to do some fun stuff here. But just before we get into the content, for those of you who are new to us, thank you for joining this webinar. We are Web Strategies, and we are a digital marketing agency that specializes in serving credit unions all across the US. Credit union marketers typically come to Web Strategies when they want to grow loans or share of wallet through online marketing. They want to incorporate tools like HubSpot into their marketing stack, or they want better tracking and reporting of their campaigns. Accomplishing that end-to-end tracking and reporting is really what Web Strategies is best known for in the credit union space. So if that's something that you're looking to get help with, please reach out. All right, well, with that, let's get the party started. I want to, and yes, this is my idea of a party, is to talk about ChatGPT and nerd out. So let's start with just kind of setting the stage here. If you weren't on the previous webinar, let's cover some things that just show the magnitude of what this technology is doing across the tech landscape, okay? Because there's some pretty interesting stats that we've come across that really create some context around how big this thing is. And one of them is the fact that let's talk about ChatGPT here. ChatGPT in its first couple months generated or reached 100 million users. Just in 2 months, 100 million users. And that is the fastest app on record in terms of getting that kind of usage. And if you compare that to some other really popular platforms, TikTok took about 9 months to reach that mark. Instagram took 30 months to reach it. So ChatGPT did this in 2 months. All right. Here's another one that was really interesting. I think in the Q1 earnings call across all public companies, the term generative AI, which is the type of AI that ChatGPT is, these large language models, has been mentioned more than 300 times across these conference calls worldwide. And prior to 2023, had barely ever been mentioned. So this went from like nothing, totally under the radar. People were talking crypto, people were talking about blockchain, to now this is the thing. But unlike crypto and blockchain, I think people are very quickly seeing the way that this can serve a real function in their day-to-day lives and has the potential to do some really disruptive things, good and bad, okay? We're also seeing a lot of tech companies move very quickly to incorporate this technology into their products. Bing and Google being the big ones, right? Bing invested billions of dollars into OpenAI, which is ChatGPT's company, and now Bing is, or Microsoft, I should say, is incorporating ChatGPT into its other product offerings, and now Bing is going to be part of ChatGPT. There's all stuff going on there. And then Google said, hold my beer, we've got an even better version of this, and they've been pushing that out. And so there's ChatGPT went from being like the only cool kid in this room to now there's Google Bard, and Google's going to make changes to its search result page. We're going to get into all that really cool stuff. But this isn't just about Google and Microsoft, right? So I want to show a couple examples that I think paint this picture of all the different unique ways that this technology could be incorporated and disrupt industries that, we're not even thinking about when we think ChatGPT. All right, so with that, I'm going to share my screen and just have some visuals to go through here real quick. So Khan Academy is a tutoring website. And they've existed long before, but you could sign up and get online tutoring. And so they're finding ways to incorporate conversational AI into their product offering, and they're going to do this in the form of like a tutor, right? So on the left here, this left screen here, can you just tell me the answer? So the student is interacting with the large language model with their ChatGPT, so to speak, within Khan Academy, and it's actually walking them through how to solve the problem, and it's kind of prompting the student to think of ways of solving the problem. This could be done using in math. This could be done in creative writing. It could be done in learning how to code. Really, really interesting application here. And what's really inspiring, at least to me in this example, is that when you look at the success rate of students who had a tutor and did not have a tutor, students who had tutors way outperformed those who didn't. I mean, you can take an average student who doesn't have a tutor and turn them into an exceptional student with one. And you can take an underperforming student and turn them into an above average student with a tutor. So now if you can provide tutors at scale, just think of what that'll do in terms of education. So that's really, really exciting. Next up is Wendy's, something completely different. Wendy's is talking about automating its drive-through service using an AI chatbot, using a Google large language model so that it can basically take your orders into drive-through. And I think what's interesting about this, there's several things. One, they say that at the very least, or it's going to be at least as good as their best customer service rep, and it's probably going to be on average better than their best customer service rep. When they talked about implementing this, they said, this is actually a lot harder than it sounds, because a car pulls up, a minivan's got kids screaming, they're talking through this thing, and how do you kind of parse out what's part of the order and what's kids screaming, or what's the passenger relaying something to the driver who's going to say something. So he said this has actually been a pretty unique challenge, but Wendy's is thinking, hey, we can make the drive-through experience better than it's ever been, and we can do it at scale without having to pay someone to take those orders. Are the gears starting to turn, from a customer service perspective? I think there's some interesting applications here for other industries. Coca-Cola is also talking about incorporating AI. They said this in their earnings call. They haven't quite said how they're going to do that. So this was my best guess. This is an AI generated image, by the way. I use Midjourney for this. Same with Wendy's. So this is not a Coca-Cola endorsed image. They're not teasing their AI through this picture. This is just me being silly. But anyway, Coca-Cola, sugar water company, is saying, hey, we're going to find ways to use AI as well. And then you have health systems who are trying to make their doctors and nurses more efficient. They're trying to use this to find ways to cure diseases and detect Parkinson's early on. So some really, really interesting things coming down the line here. And this, to me, is very analogous in some ways to the smartphone. And I heard this described as another iPhone moment. Now, go back to the iPhone. iPhone was 08, 09 timeframe, right? And we all know how transformative these devices are, right? Just in and of themselves, what they allow us to do has been really disruptive, really transformative. That's obvious. You think about the multiple layers that we have here, though. Not only do we have smartphones, the smartphone enabled Uber, just one app, one company that has totally disrupted the taxi industry. Okay. So when they invented the smartphone, I guarantee you no one was saying, there goes taxis. When Steve Jobs was holding up the first iPhone, they weren't saying, there go taxis, right? Who was thinking that deep with it? No one was, right? But that's what we believe this technology can do, but even at a deeper scale. So there's all the obvious applications that are out there, and we just showed some. But then when you think about industries below that will be disrupted in very, very meaningful ways because of the power of this technology, I think that's where this conversation gets pretty intense pretty quickly. Okay. So here's where we want to go from here. Now that we've kind of set the stage a little bit, I want to recap some of the changes we're seeing with ChatGPT, because ChatGPT has made some really interesting progress lately. Then I'm going to turn it over to Emily. And Emily, it'd be great if you could share what's going on in the world of Google and Bard and what we're seeing there, and if that's something we need to be paying attention to. Caroline to go over some of the things HubSpot's doing to implement this, just as an example of a marketing software implementing AI. And then we'll talk about some of the things we think credit unions need to be paying attention to here. Okay. So let me share some of the features. Let me pull up my screen again here that I think we should all be aware of when we're talking about ChatGPT and generative AI. All right, so not everybody has these features yet. You have to be a GPT-4 user subscriber, and even then you don't necessarily get access to all of these. But right now, web browsing and plugins are available, and I'll show some examples of that. Code Interpreter is one that I personally don't have access to yet. Some people have, and they're showing examples of it. Really, really cool stuff, and I want to show what that could look like. So what Code Interpreter basically does is allows you to input a very large data set into ChatGPT, and it will run all the analysis, pull all the insights, visualize this data for you. There was one really fun example that I want to share here, and that is that somebody took 300 hours of their Spotify playlist, uploaded it to ChatGPT Code Interpreter, and ChatGPT produced all of these visualizations around their playlist. Lots and lots of different statistical analysis going on here, things that I have long since forgotten since I took statistics in college. But if we zoom in on one of these, I mean, look what it did. It created this kind of matrix here where it's comparing or it's kind of graphing the songs based off of time signature and how danceable the music is and the key that the music's in. Again, it was just uploading it. It was doing all this analysis for you. So a bit of a silly example, but again, you think, well, if I have like real business data here and I could deploy it into one of these tools, what could it tell me? What could it visualize for me? And instead of having to sort through a bunch of useless graphs that come in some out-of-the-box solution, you could upload it, run prompts off of it, and it could produce all these visuals for you just like that. Really, really cool, really, really powerful stuff. All right, so Code Interpreter is in alpha right now. I think that's going to be pushed out relatively soon. Now you may be saying, well, there's no way I'm going to upload my business data into ChatGPT, and I don't blame you. I'm not going to be quick to do that either. I'm probably only going to use this feature for data that I can find online that I just want to play around with or pull some insights from, or stuff that's just not proprietary to web strategies in our business. But there are other tools coming down the line, and we'll talk about one of those in a minute, which will allow you to license the model and use it on internal data in a closed environment. So again, if it's possible here, it's going to be possible in a more secure environment. And so then you can just get those gears turning on, like, well, how could we use this? How can we make our jobs faster and find insights faster from that? Okay. Let's talk about a couple other ChatGPT developments that have come about recently. Web browsing is one that just got pushed out. So previous to web browsing, ChatGPT was closed off up until September 2021. And that was all the recent data it had. Okay. Now with web browsing, if you run a search and you're looking for some more recent information, it will go out online, find that data, and pull it back. So here's an example of a timely search that I did yesterday. I said, summarize the interest rate hikes over the last 12 months with the date of the hike, and show it in a table format. It went out, it searched it, pulled it out, put it right here. Okay, so an example of web browsing. I didn't have to go visit a site, pull it from there, copy and paste it over. I could just hit the copy button in the top right and then do whatever I need to do with the information. Okay, so pulling data directly from the web. Other cool applications of this too, right? If you want to get information about local businesses, what's the top rated local business near me that does this, or show me the rates of financial institutions near me, or in this zip code. It could go out, retrieve that information, pull it back, right? So you start to see how this could really influence search behavior, how people go out, research businesses, all that kind of stuff, all right? Another really, really cool development in this space has been plugins. And again, if you're a GPT-4 subscriber, you have access to this now. And what this allows you to do is, well, really what it's allowing ChatGPT to do is harness the power of other web applications and their unique data sets and their unique utility, and bring that into the ChatGPT experience. So there are many developers out there who are creating plugins for their own websites that are now usable within ChatGPT. Couple examples: Zapier, Kayak, Instacart, Zillow has one as well. So if you went to ChatGPT and said, "Hey, show me, 5 houses under $500,000 in this zip code," it's going to pull 5 of them, from Zillow and put them right there. Right? You could do something like that. Some of the plugins that I have really enjoyed playing around with: one, Ask Your PDF. I don't know why this is something I'm kind of obsessed with, but I love the idea of going out and taking a very, very large PDF, and instead of having to go through the index and find what I'm looking for and do, searches on it, I just upload it into here. It reads the entire PDF, and then I can ask questions off of it. So what I did is I took a really long user manual of a bicycle, and this was 30 pages long. I uploaded it, and then I asked very specific technical questions. It went out and it found those answers, and it gave them to me fairly quickly here. Okay. So again, imagine you have, a large, this could be used for training. So maybe you have a really large PDF that talks about protocol, or here's how we do this, or here's who you go to in this scenario. You upload it to that. And then someone could just run prompts off of it and get answers to the questions, because it's interpreted the entire PDF. Another cool plugin is one that will summarize YouTube videos. So this was an 1 hour and 10-minute long YouTube video on the threat of AI. And you could see the prompt in the top right: "Please share the main concerns that these 2 people have about artificial intelligence during this TED Talk." I don't think it was actually a TED Talk. I can't remember what it was. And so I just put the YouTube link. It went out, read the transcript, and now I can prompt off of that transcript, right? So now I don't have to hunt and peck through the video itself, right? So ChatGPT, OpenAI is kind of crushing it right now. They're putting out new features very quickly. They're very powerful. They're not perfect. None of these are perfect. Still recommend validating the things that you're seeing and hearing on them. But again, for how good they are with how young they are, you have to believe that before long, especially with this gold rush going on that many of these companies see on the horizon, that this stuff's going to get really, really, really good really, really quickly, even better than it already is. So if you can start to wrap your head around the use cases and you understand this would save me an hour in my day, and you multiply that across 20 people in your company 5 days a week, you see how that time savings adds up very, very, very quickly. And that's just for one single use case, right? So ChatGPT is still kind of at the top of our list, or it's maybe a 1-2 punch with Google, but Google has started to do some really, really interesting things. And Emily, I want to turn it over to you so you can give us a little bit of a tour through what Google's changing and what we think this might mean for the generative AI game.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I think being first to market really helped ChatGPT, but Google is not going to go softly into that dark night. They're not riding off into the sunset and feeling defeated. They certainly have come out with some things, especially if you're paying attention and you watch any of Google's I/O announcements and all of the cool things that came out of that. A lot of it was about AI and about Bard and about workspaces and some other things that are going to impact a lot of our daily use of Google, I think. So a couple things. Bard is Google's answer to ChatGPT. It's a large language model. It's very similar. Where I think Bard has some advantages, just purely from a user interface perspective. I think it's really easy to use. It also has the classic Google stickiness that if you ask a question or you put in a prompt and you get an answer, you also have the ability to Google search it, right? Google wants you to stay within Google. If it was up to them, you would never leave. And you would just be in all of their products all day long. And so it has that ability, which is I think really neat. The other thing is Chris mentioned that ChatGPT 4 it's pay to play to get internet access, and Bard has access to the internet for free right now. So that's certainly, when we're talking about barriers to entry or other things, that's certainly something that I think is an advantage for Bard at the moment. The other thing is too, conversationally, I think Bard has a little bit of an advantage, and I don't think that that's an accident. I think Google really prioritized conversational abilities in their large language model because of how people are asking questions, right? And because of search and because of integration with that. So that's just another thing I think is really interesting about Bard is I do think ChatGPT has a little bit of a leg up in terms of text processing, like Chris was saying with the PDF plugin and things like that. But just purely from a conversational perspective, I would give Bard the edge. So just little foray into Bard as we kind of roll through some things that before we get into the Google search and generative AI integrations.
And Emily, something else that made me think of when you're talking about web browsing ability, Google's inherent advantage in this whole race is their corpus of data. They are a data company. I mean, they're an ad company, but those ads are really propped up on data, right? They've got YouTube, they've got all of their crawl data. They've been processing tons and tons of data for a long, long time. And they probably have a more advanced knowledge graph than anyone else. Facebook probably having the edge on the social graph, but on the knowledge graph, Google has the edge. And one of the things that we don't quite know yet is, are other content publishers going to play nicely with this, right? Because like take Reddit is a good example, right? So there's so much great content on Reddit, and it's democratized, right? Because good comments, good input gets voted up, right? But these sites can say, you know what? We're not letting you come onto our site because we don't want you to come steal all the information that we have from our users and then just kind of mash it up and then put it out there without citing us and without giving us the page view. So these publishers could theoretically cut off the pipeline of knowledge to ChatGPT very quickly, which is probably why their Microsoft Bing relationship is really, really important here. Mm-hmm. But I think just the amount of YouTube data alone, that's something that Microsoft just can't replicate, right? So that's where like the web browsing capability, I would give it the edge up to Google there. Even though like right now, when I try to do some searches, it can be wildly inaccurate. Like I was researching Kim Scott, who did Radical Candor, and it said she was former CEO of Nike. She was not the former CEO of Nike. So like it hallucinates really strange stuff. And I don't know why, because they know better. But that makes me a little nervous about what the future of ChatGPT is from a web browsing capability, because people could cut that stream off and then Google's the only one, you know?
Right. And people are a lot less likely to block Common Crawl because of the potential for them to get clicks and traffic to their website, right? Versus just a tool like ChatGPT that would scrape and not give necessarily the source information or not necessarily direct people to click through. And so I think that's where specifically from a marketing perspective and from a traffic perspective and using your website as your marketing tool perspective, I think that's where it'll get really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for those who don't know, Emily just referenced Common Crawl. It's basically a little line of code you can put on your website that allows Google, Microsoft, any of these crawlers to come read your site and then reference it in their search results and rank it. but you can block that. You could say, I don't want Google coming reading this page. And so some sites are saying, hey, we may do that for this AI technology. Do not come and crawl. You're not allowed in, and there's nothing they can do to bypass that. So we'll see. I mean, Google would be subjected to that too. It's just Google would be able to rely on its, corpus of search data and YouTube to pull from, which you have to believe is a lot more rich than what Microsoft has. But yeah, what if Reddit's, Reddit, Quora, what are other big knowledge sites? Wikipedia, if they say no,
well, even if you take aggregate sites too, right?
Yeah.
Where you're like, how does that change, Yelp even?
Right.
Or if those sites block Common Crawl, but then other things, it's just a really interesting thought about how it could change that piece. And then there's additional pieces that I think, are going to look different in 6 months in a way that maybe we didn't even think they would. So I think there's a lot of question marks on that front of what it's going to look like, but we know it's going to change, right? So
yeah. And it all comes down to, I mean, if publishers feel like they cannot monetize what these large language models are taking from them, the way that, this handshake agreement has worked in the past between Google and web and content publishers, then yeah, there's going to be, people are going to take their stand on things. So the next several months are going to be really interesting as these things become even more powerful. But the big thing in the news is Google's talking about a whole new search experience. So this is outside of Bard. Bard is the conversational large language model chatbot that looks a lot like ChatGPT and just does its own set of tricks. Probably not as advanced, you can't do the PDF thing on it. That failed, but you could input text, it could generate text from you, that kind of cool stuff. Mm-hmm. But it's changes that Google's going to make to the actual search result page that makes us as search marketers really interested, nervous, excited, scared, because this could really change the way people go out and find businesses online. Emily, let's take a look at what they're doing here, and what we think that might be in the future. Chris? I absolutely can. And I'm going to start with another AI generated image. By the way, if you're wondering how these are created, I'm using a tool called Midjourney, which runs through a Discord channel, and it's a paid tool, but it's not much. It's like $10 or something like that a month. And you just describe what you want, and it spits it out fairly quickly. Like here I said, create a Coca-Cola robot person, and this was like create a robot Wendy's mascot, whatever, and it created that within seconds. It's really, really fun. My kids have a lot of fun with it. Anyway, moving on. Emily, let's look at this first slide.
Yeah, so this was something that Google released like in their demo, right, as a screenshot of that. And basically, this is a initial search for, what planet is most similar to Earth, right? And you see at the top there, the AI generated answer. And then you see to the right, the websites, and then you see all the way at the bottom another search listed website, and then some prompts underneath, like things like ask a follow-up. Can humans live on, I believe that's yes, it's a star, or no, not a star, excuse me, a planet, but one that's
similar to Earth.
Similar to Earth. Again, this is a little out of my wheelhouse in terms of planet knowledge.
You read 25 books in the first few months of the year, and you haven't read anything about planets, Emily?
I know. You know what? I'm going to have to add some deep space.
Get some Neil deGrasse Tyson, some Brian Cox on that reading list.
I know. I'm really falling behind in my black hole theory and all.
You need to figure this out, because if AI does destroy humanity, we have to go to another planet to survive. So
this actually is probably a lot more prescient than I was thinking. But thankfully, there are experts like NASA or other people who know what they're talking about, who are listed on that right-hand side right there. again, using kind of Google's algorithm as we know it, the like EAT, right? The expertise, the authority, the trust, and relevancy, all of those things that we have come to know and love about Google search are reflected in the websites. But if you notice, they take up a lot less real estate, right? That AI generated answer there at the top takes up almost all of the space, right? And
It's
so
everything in blue, right? Everything in this blue,
Mhm.
it might be hard to see in the screenshot, but where you see what's the most Earth-like planet in the solar system, that's the first like traditional organic result, I think, in this whole thing.
Yeah,
Everything above that, which is really the entire screenshot, is this new generative AI experience in search.
right. And so the part about that's really interesting is how that's going to affect clicks, right? Is your stuff, even if you rank first, are people going to be satisfied with the generated AI answer, or are they going to click through? So it's very possible we see a reduction in clicks from a search perspective.
Right. So another one here, plans for a dark dorm room.
Yeah. So the
Yeah.
coolest thing about this one, right, is this is where we kind of get into those like review websites when you Google talked about Google Perspectives, which is like a cool filter that, and this is where we kind of got into some interesting things that we might be able to do in the future. But basically, it's relying on not necessarily sites like NASA's website, right, that have this like amazing expertise and authority, right, but that have like very specific knowledge and information about these things, you know, and Google released, I think what that's last helpful content update, a desire for more like perspectives from people. Like people want to hear from other people. The women who go online and review clothing and they tell you their height and their weight, they're doing just the best kind of work, right? Because they're not necessarily getting anything from those reviews, but everyone wants to know what their perspective is, right? And so similarly, Google is starting to prefer perspective in some of this, and we're seeing that reflected in some of the generative AI results, right? I think where this could be really interesting for credit unions in particular, is how do we rank in the top 3 so that we appear next to the AI generated answers? I think too, testimonials and having like member perspective articles or preferring those kinds of content might be a really interesting way to get in front of people, right? Because if people want to hear about what it's like to join a credit union from someone who just did that, that might be a really interesting play in terms of like content or other things like that maybe we haven't necessarily explored in the same way, right? We talk about review acquisition, but now it might have a different point and it might be more geared towards that helpful perspective for people who are looking for something from someone who experienced something that they might go through.
Yeah, and Emily, an example that I think about is this is, I think, going to make online research feel more like in-person conversational research on something. So let's talk about looking for a credit union. And so again, we're showing examples here of how these AI searches are a lot more rich in what they're providing. Okay, so now that we've set the stage there, let's think about this scenario where someone is looking to get a loan, just looking to get a car loan, right? And let's say that they want to use a credit union. They've already decided that. So online, what we see people do is go to Google and search credit unions near me. But that's not all. That's not the only criteria of their search. They want to know who's nearby. Then they want to know what the rates are. They want to know what the reviews are. There are all these, several levels to their research that they want to do. That's how they search today, because that information is not presented in a very complete way. All those questions aren't presented in a cohesive way from one search. It's just search is not that advanced yet. If you go up to somebody like your friend in the neighborhood, what do? You're not going to say, hey, Susan, credit unions near me? Right? You're going to say, hey, Susan, do you know like a good credit union that's like really nice to work with, that like has really good rates? Because I'm getting this car. You're going to ask the whole question, right? I think as these tools start to feel more conversational and human-like, and the results are more complete and comprehensive, people are going to go and ask all of that at once, and they're not going to hunt and poke around through these sites and piece things together on their own. They're going to expect these tools to give the whole perspective to them from a single search, right? So that's maybe one of the first things that we really want to draw attention to with credit unions is, for credit unions in this new world of search, reputation is going to be very important, and access to all of the information about your credit union is going to be very important, because these are the things that people are looking up when they find you. But I think instead of that happening as step 5, 6, 7, 8 in the research process, it's all going to happen in the first step, right? So these tools need to be able to get access to that information, have a very complete understanding of you, how reputable you are, what your rates are, what features you have, where your locations are, because it's anticipating, not only is it anticipating what someone wants to know, in addition to their initial question, but people are going to start changing the way they search, and those answers are going to have to be available in the search result immediately, right?
And I think Trey has a question. Did you say Google will generate the top 3 text based off of your member reviews? No, I'm sorry if that was unclear. So it's 2 things. I think ranking in the top 3 is going to be more important because there's those spots next to the AI generated answer. So that's one piece of it. And then the next piece of that, though, is perspectives have become more important. There will actually be a perspectives feature or filter within this kind of generative AI search experience. So it may start to prefer things that are like review based, or Chris, if you go to the example of like the restaurants, you'll see underneath there, people talk about, right? So what are people saying, when they're looking at credit unions? Let's say here, compare these 3 credit unions and their rates on. People talk about, this thing, and it'll pull in reviews. In the previous examples we showed, there are 3 things listed next to it, but that's not necessarily based off of member reviews. But personally, I think that reviews and perspective information from members or experts will start to influence more of what we see.
Yeah. And the other part of that answer, Trey, is that we just don't know how Google's going to take its current results and turn those into these AI results. It may be, they may correlate that if you were in top 3 before, you're going to be much more likely to show in the AI results, but we don't quite know yet. My money would be yes. And I think really just another way to think of it is the rich are going to get richer. If you're very well represented and you're earning top spots, most likely to continue earning top spots, but we still just don't quite know what it's going to look like. And it could be a lot more diverse because it's the algorithm, the AI algorithm is taking a lot more things into account than what the previous search algorithm was able to take into account. I do want, we could stay on this topic, but I want to show, I want to switch gears here and talk about a whole nother example of this, which is, because we're all marketers here, and we see how the search landscape could be changing, but let's talk a little bit about how this could be incorporated in marketing software. Now, we previewed this a little bit last time with HubSpot and ChatSpot, which is kind of their AI version of HubSpot, so to speak, kind of. But we've got there are some new features out there. We want to show those off. And even if you're not a HubSpot user and don't intend to use HubSpot, this is still very, very relevant, because we think that all forward-thinking platforms are going to be finding their version of this soon and launching it soon. And so we want you to kind of see, here's one example of how this generative AI layered on top of a marketing database in a CRM can really, superpower a lot of day-to-day tasks. And then it might be easier to make that connection with the tools that you use. So Caroline, let's throw it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Thumbs up from my crew if everyone hear me okay. It's my first time on the mic, so thank you, guys. So yeah, I think this is a great what Emily and Chris showed great examples of how you can use and position your content better for the attract stage, right? You're getting your information out there, people are finding you on search, and this is not just HubSpot, but just in general, a good methodology for how you should have different communication tactics and strategies for each, wherever your customer, whether it's a stranger or prospected customer or people that you want to remarket to or make advocates for your organization, kind of where it's a continual communications process. So where ChatSpot comes in, some examples I'll share here is really when we go from strangers into prospects and then continuing those using AI tools to target your prospects and customers through the power of your CRM. So we are big fans and advocates and HubSpot partners over here at Web Strategies, but really we just think this, whatever CRM you're using, like Chris said, this is something that if it's a forward-thinking organization, if you're investing in a CRM, this would be one of the qualities to check off your list when you're kind of shopping around, if they're investing in continual improvement of not only their product, but then layering on other technology on top of that. So this is our sandbox CRM. So if you have HubSpot, for any of those folks here, you're probably typically used to seeing this when you log in. You have your CRM, your different hubs across marketing, sales, service, your automation, your reporting. So I love the example when Chris and I were kind of prepping for this, that the value here of ChatSpot and connecting this app is you're no longer having to open the hood and dig around and try to figure out things. Instead, you can use prompting to get you there faster, save you clicks, save you time. And Chris also used the example of, instead of, your supervisor, your boss might ask you for a report, and then you are going and building that report or looking up that data. You in turn become your own CEO, and ChatSpot is your employee. So you are prompting them to pull those data points as metrics. It's also, if you're in a meeting and you need to quickly find something and you don't have time to click around, this is a great tool just to add on here to start. When we onboard any of our clients onto HubSpot, now this is 100% a app we recommend connecting and integrating into HubSpot. And then as an additional caveat before we get started, data should always be the foundation. If you're using HubSpot as your source of truth for your data, and reporting, it's only going to be as good as the data you're putting in. We spend a lot of time working on whether it's a manual import and a custom or a native integration or a middleware integration with getting that data in there. We really work on making sure that data is going to be continually updated so that you're getting accurate results in what you're looking for here. So we'll go through a couple of examples here that's connected to our account so that we can get accurate data and show some examples here. So say you are on a call, a salesperson on a call, and you want to add someone into your CRM and know you want to follow up with them in 4 days. So typically before, you would go in here, create a contact, enter all their information. Then once you create that contact, you would then need to add a task to follow up with them. Instead of doing that, what you could do is you could come in here into HubSpot and say, add this contact. So I'm going to pick on Chris and add him, even number 4, because I've added him a number of times. And then we want to say follow up with him in 4 days. So we're just going to put, it's connected to our portal here. And instead of having to go through multiple clicks, we've added Chris's email, we've added a task to follow up, and even here, an additional prompt that they'll give you, do you want to add a note to this contact for any context? And so it did this in 4 seconds, and you can view this in HubSpot here. So that's one example, and you'll see here, if you open up the ChatSpot tool, there's a lot of prompts that fall under different categories. I like to favorite some of my favorites. So as it's very much in the early phase, it's built on OpenAI's technology. you'll see that sometimes the more you use it, the more it can get very particular about wanting prompts in a certain way. So some of these pre-prompts can help, or just rephrasing things and coming back to it can help as well. So that's a CRM example. So another example, I think, where this holds a lot of power, and two other kind of buckets I want to review is research and reporting, because I think those are two, especially reporting, can take a lot of time to build those reports. So if we look at, we know we're looking at a competitor in our space, and we want to see and what kind of paid search terms they're going after. So I've pre-written these because I tested these prompts and know they played nicely, but if you open this up, it will give you the exact code to do that, or you can just type in plain language and it should pick it up as well without all these brackets and such. But so we can see HubSpot, and we can see, the position they're ranking for, their search volume, their cost per click, and we can see that all within this tool, and, research on multiple different data points we want to dig into, when previously you might have had to go to the Google Keyword Planner, you might have had to do, a number of other tools to research this. And instead you can kind of stay in here and get that information in one place. So I know I'm at my 10, I'm getting close to my 10-minute mark. So I'll go through one more example here to leave some time for Q&A. So another example is the reporting example. So if we want to, previously you'd have to come in here, reports, your dashboards and reports. You'd have to then, create a report. You'd have to decide which points you want to pull on, if it's a single object or custom, multiple objects. And if you know how HubSpot is built on objects, you can say, oh, I know what objects I'm going to pull. I know what data points. But if you just kind of know the end result you want to get, and you don't know really the ingredients that go into it, it's kind of like just place your order here and then have it delivered to you. So, and if you don't feel like cooking tonight. So here's say we want to create a report of website traffic for this year so far. So that's the example I'm going to put in here. That will get ChatSpot thinking. And then see here, we see so far today is the 24th of May. So we have this amount of data on here, and say we want to view that as a bar chart for data visualization. A little better to see that in bar chart, so we can start to analyze trends here, click in further, view as a table. So I think that's reporting's a big opportunity here if you have HubSpot and want to create reports through ChatSpot. Another example would be a report of contacts. Let's see, of contacts grouped by company owner. So we could kind of this looks at a combination of reporting, but also maybe data maintenance, data hygiene, viewing our CRM. So you can see exactly who from your team is here, how many contacts they have assigned to them. Maybe if you have someone that's no longer with your organization, and you can see how many contacts are assigned to them and say, this is a good data hygiene opportunity, we can reassign all these contacts. So those are a few examples I wanted to share just to give some inspiration. This is a very fun tool that there's, prompts, pre-written prompts you could play around with. If you have HubSpot, you can just go to the app marketplace, and you can get there quickly by, let me show folks. If you go here, so you can go a number of places, but go into your settings icons, your integrations, connected apps, and you can get to the marketplace there and just search for ChatSpot, and you can connect it and kind of start playing around with it.
Excellent. Thanks, Caroline, for that demo. I think while it's still very much in its infancy, clearly, if you say, okay, if it can do this now, as they build on it, you're going to be able to ask it very specific requests. Can you get me data from this point comparing to last year only for people under this criteria. There's every reason in the world to believe that it's going to be able to produce that very seamlessly, very quickly, right? I mean, really what this has done has, it's one of the best ways I like to think of it, and this is how people refer to it, is as a universal interpreter, right? And universal translator. So everything that we do in our day-to-day, whether you're writing code, you're pulling reports, you're looking at data, and you're trying to find a way to turn it into something that you can then talk to your boss about or talk to your team about, you're the one doing the translating. You're taking this raw information, you're going through and manually pulling it, you're interpreting it, and then you're turning it into language for somebody else. These tools are doing all of that for you. So you simply become kind of the executive who's doing the initial ask. And instead of being the person who has to go back and do all the interpretation yourself and pulling all the data, that's what these tools are going to do, right? So again, if you look at it and say, it kind of looks like it's not doing anything too great. One, I agree with you, but two, you have to see how this is going to evolve into something really, really powerful really quickly. It just needs to iterate a little bit more beyond where it already is. And I mean, come on, give it a break. It's like a few months old, right? It's already able to do this. That's insane.
Yeah.
So,
my 5-year-old's really into Pokemon. So I like to say this is like the first evolution, and then it's going to evolve and get stronger as it evolves into the more evolutions.
I know this is like, it's like it's like NES from the 80s. And now, it's going to be at like, Switch level within a year or two. I mean, it's moving at an incredible rate. So, this all begs the question again, like what do credit unions need to be thinking about? How do they need to be prepared for this? And acknowledging that a lot of these tools are not like ready for prime time, especially in the financial space with all the regulations, but that doesn't mean that they don't have a place in our lives yet. Really, the recommendation I've been giving everybody, and Emily and Caroline can attest to this, is that like find 1, 2, or 3 ways to use this in your day-to-day. Because really what you want to do is you want to build your chops on these tools. You want to become fluent in how to prompt and understand how they work. Because what you ultimately don't want to have happen is that any of these new things that come out, you don't want them to surprise you. You basically want to get to a point where whatever the next big thing is, you're like, yeah, I totally see how that was the next step we were going to take in all this. Because if that's obvious to you and it doesn't surprise you, it means you've been preparing for it in some way. You've been preparing your department for it. You've been thinking about it in your role, or maybe even in your career. You're like, yeah, I see how this is going to wipe out what I do in a year or two, but I'm getting used to using this tool. And now I've built this other skill set that I can go move somewhere else and use, right? But at least in terms of how credit unions in particular can use it, there's a few ways we thought of in particular that we want to make you aware of. One, going back to that Wendy's example, customer service, how people interact with you. Again, every reason to believe that people are going to be able to call in, not have to go through some phone tree system and take 5 minutes to talk to person to get an answer to their question. They dial in, the AI is ready, and you can ask it questions. It knows exactly what you're asking. It can retrieve whatever information is needed to be retrieved, help people however they need to be helped, who speak with all kinds of accents and using and misusing all kinds of different words and trying to describe their problem. And you'll be able to do that at scale. Now, I know what you're thinking, credit unions, we're known for our customer service. This is going to hurt our customer service. This is going to make it better. This is going to make all that stuff a lot better. Okay. And a lot faster. Ultimately, people are trying to get answers to their problems more so than they're trying to talk to that really nice person. So this is going to help people find answers to those problems really quickly. And if they can solve it for Wendy's drive-through, they could probably solve it for a financial institution, right? How you're discovered by new members. What Google is showing here with how they're going to change the search experience, the way people are using tools like ChatGPT and Bard to research what they're trying to do and what they're trying to solve for, eyeballs are shifting. And I'm really interested to see how normal Google search volume is changing this year as a result of these tools. I know personally, because I'm a pretty heavy user, that there are dozens and dozens of websites that I did not see, ads I did not see, links I did not click, because I got my information from Bard or ChatGPT, and I think that's only going to increase. Another way, how you keep and grow members. when these tools, similar to what Caroline was just showing, we didn't even get too deep into this, but being able to build lists and campaigns very quickly based on a whole corpus of information on your membership base and past members. You could prompt it to say, pull together a list of people who meet this specific criteria, who look like people who have been our longtime members and who are our largest members. And these tools will be able to go out and find members that they think have the potential to become similar to your best members. But you don't know it yet because they haven't really shown that, but there's something kind of deep within the data that says there's a high probability that these could become power members for you, right?
Yeah, that's actually a quick example of how we combine that power. As we made kind of lists like that from the CRM and HubSpot for one of our clients. And then I coordinated one of our members from the ad team, or the manager of our ad team, Christina, was able to take that list and say, hey, Google, this is what Google Ads, this is what looks like a high value customer to us. Go find others that look like this. So we're able to use our own data for the awareness stage.
As long as the data exists, these tools are going to be able to go out and find information that you can't find on your own. You can't do it efficiently, at least, or you'd have to pay someone a lot of money to find that for you. And this is going to do it in a flash, right? And so that kind of segues into the fourth opportunity, which is just business intelligence and operations, being able to do the things that you need to do much faster, make recommendations for you, analyze data for you, and then just workflow processes that can be much, much faster as a result of this technology. And again, if you're thinking, oh, well, we can't, our data is so sensitive, so private, we can't make that available to these tools. Totally get that. That's why we don't recommend doing this with ChatGPT. But one of the really interesting announcements at Google's I/O, which Emily referenced before, is that they teased that they're going to make one of these language models, that they're going to license it, and it'll be available for businesses to use with their own data sets in a closed environment. So you could.
That might be the most interesting thing, and I feel like we could do an entire these just on that piece about how they're gonna let you license Palm for your own closed environment, which could be revolutionary in terms of like utilizing your business data.
Oh gosh, I mean, that's the part honestly that excites me the most, that you could put it in there and have basically suddenly have a team of like 50 data analysts who could answer every question in a heartbeat for you. So, the question becomes, again, like, what can you do to prepare before these tools are really commercially available? I talked about building prompting fluency. Use it, force yourself to use it. The next time you're doing something, say, I'm going to see if there's a way I can use ChatGPT to do this for me. Even if it's just like writing an email to a colleague and you can't do it without sounding like aggressive towards them because you don't like them. It's like, let me just write it the way I'm feeling it and then have ChatGPT smooth it out. Like, just even something as silly as that, find ways to, build habits around these tools, because then I think the next breakthrough happens a little bit easier for you and a little bit faster. And next thing you know, it's just something that you'd be paying a lot of money to keep because it's such a big tool in your belt. The other important one is you really have to be investing in progressive, forward-thinking tech platforms. I guarantee you every major tech platform out there, HubSpot, Salesforce, these big CRMs, these big tech companies, we talked about Microsoft, Google, they are pouring millions, billions even into these tools. They know how important these are. And once those are out there, if you're a customer of those tools, you get access, boom, you're off to the races. But if you're using something that's clunky, that's proprietary, that's not well supported, that doesn't have this as a priority on their roadmap, man, your competition is going to be over the horizon. You're just going to see like a Wile E. Coyote smoke trail from where they were, right? And then bringing in all of your data across systems. Again, I think, Emily, you said this, or Carol, it might have been you. So Emily, I take this back. You said a lot of great things, so you deserve all the accolades too. These things are only as good as the data that they have. Data is their oxygen. So the more data that you can compile together, the more complete picture you can give of your membership base and of your operations. That's what is going to power these tools to do more than what your competition could potentially do. Okay. So we're going to keep on this. We're going to keep coming to you with new insights. We can't wait until this stuff gets released properly to the credit union world. Again, not there yet, but there's actually a question here. We can get into Q&A now. I know we're over time, so if you want to hang around, watch, we'll get into Q&A. But this first, one of these questions really touches on this, which was, can AI solutions produce content compliant with the most up-to-date regulations for deposits, loans, et cetera, for credit unions? Can they include notations for reference disclosures that need to be included? So this is an example of like the technology is absolutely here to do everything that you're describing. It just has not been packaged exactly for that purpose yet. But all it takes is for someone to come along and say, well, it's all here. I just have to package it for this space, for this purpose, add these little conditions onto how it works, this 1 or 2 or 3 features, and boom, it's there. And this is the case with so many applications. I think there's so many soon to be minted billionaires and just these unicorn companies coming about because they're saying, we're going to take this tool and we're just going to position it for this obscure industry and solve this thing that people have always struggled with. We're going to do it really quickly. So I think all the raw ingredients are there. It just needs to be kind of repackaged for that purpose, Nick, and then it will do exactly that. Another question here, Emily, I'll let you take this one. How will AI impact marketing careers over the next 5 to 10 years? Will some marketing roles be fully automated by the end of the 20s?
So I have a lot of feelings on this.
As someone with a marketing job.
Yeah. So personally, I don't think it's going to like replace us. How everyone's like, the robots will replace us eventually. I mean, I think that's like way down the line. I don't think 5 to 10 years is enough time for AI to become truly artificial intelligence and replace us. But I think roles will change because artificial intelligence, as we know it, is going to be part of a lot more jobs. And we're already seeing that reflected. I think there are certain companies now who like require prompting experience and other things like that. So I think fluency in AI is going to be part of our roles. And, artificial intelligence, is intelligent in the way that it's able to vary state or action in response to varying situations or requirements or past experience, but it's not intelligent in the way that like it's able to produce a unique or new perspective in the way that humans can, right? So I do think that there's going to be more of, you're going to have to be prompting fluent and you're going to have to know how to use it. But I don't think in the next 5 to 10 years, it will replace roles, with the exception of potentially in the customer service sphere. But I even think there that it's going to be really critical to have human oversight and some of the connections that humans are able to build that I just am not sure in 5 to 10 years we'd be able to replace. But
yeah,
I'm a little more bullish. I think 5 years, there's going to be a lot of displacement.
yeah.
Okay.
That's what I think. But it's one of the ways I heard it described, I think is pretty accurate here, is that in general, you might be overstating the near term, but greatly underestimating the long term.
Yeah, I can see that being the case. But again, I think that the piece for me that's missing in all of this, which maybe I'm, as Chris saying, underestimating the long term, but is that piece where all of these large language models are like aggregating and processing data that we give it. It's not creating anything that hasn't been given to it, right? So it's completely reliant on all of our input.
Yeah.
So I think until it can start to generate like, oh, here's what you should be doing, or what this, it's always going to rely on, hey, what are the goals of what we're trying to do as a marketing department, as a credit union, whatever. It's always going to be reliant on that. Now it could probably get to the point where it's suggesting things, right, or whatever based on overall knowledge. But I think that human element is always going to be necessary.
It's going to be involved. Yeah, it's hard to say how much. And that doesn't even speak to whatever regulation is going to come about. Like if they tap the brake, that could be the thing that really prolongs this. If they think too many jobs are going to get wiped out too quickly. I'm of the camp that there's going to be a lot of displacement, but there's also going to be new job creation.
Yeah,
Right.
you've
And
seen
I
that with
think-
the writer's strike. They're trying to ban the use of AI tools for a lot of these to replace writers, right? And
Right.
like studio writers and for TV shows, because they're like, you're not going to get new information. Like Emily was saying, you're going to get regurgitated and information. And there's already some AI like chat bots and chats are on people's sites to, sometimes if anyone's a Chipotle lover like me, I've chatted Pepper a couple times if I've gotten the wrong order, and that can save your customer service people from stuff that can, be automated, and save your humans for the work that only humans can do and that need that human touch. The same
Right.
what we use with workflows. Like not everything should be automated, but what can we filter and say, put this in the automation lane, and then we have more bandwidth to handle the human-centered work.
And the stuff that humans do best.
Yeah.
Right. And they can be focused on that. So it's not just one of 20 things they do. It's like the core thing that they do. So yeah, job
So that's
displacement.
why I think it'll change roles.
Yeah.
Less, and maybe, yeah, it will replace some roles, but I think that overall, I don't see how we get to a point in the next 5 to 10 years where like basically humans are just freed up to do leisure activities and we all have,
No, but you know what? I think that's some estimates have the singularity, which is when general intelligence hits, artificial general intelligence, where it's smarter than humans and is accelerating beyond a point that we can do anything about it. Some estimate that to be in the 40s, right? And it does bring up, yeah, if they can handle everything, then what do we have to do? And then are we all just like characters from WALL-E sitting in our floating lounge chairs?
I don't know. I have lots of leisure activities that I can plan on doing.
You have a
We'll
child.
see
You
if
don't have
that's
that
what our
much.
lives consist of. Brings up an interesting argument for universal basic income, but that's not what we're here to talk about. Last question: best way to pitch AI to hesitant executives who lack trust in the tech, and to employees who are concerned that AI will replace them. Second part of this question we just kind of addressed, but we can hit again. I do think we have to acknowledge, like, I get up here and I know I'm very enthusiastic about it, and to any skeptic, they'll say, "Dude, chill out. Like you're taking this way too far. You're way too excited. You don't see the flaws." And I have a friend who has a PhD in machine learning, and he usually keeps me pretty grounded on this stuff. So I think you do have to empathize and acknowledge, yeah, these are not perfect. These are not where they need to be yet, but we're getting glimpses of their potential. We're even starting to see ways that it can change things today. So if you just kind of extrapolate on what we already have, I think it's pretty easy to connect those dots on more disruptive things happening in the not so distant future. But I think one way to frame it is that this is an evolutionary moment. And we've seen several of those in the age of digital, right? We had the internet in the 90s. We had social come about in the 2000s. We had smartphones in the late 2000s. And each one of those created a cosmic shift in business operations and careers and efficiency and intelligence and insights amongst businesses. And, you don't want to be the Steve Ballmer who laughs off the iPhone, which is a clip I just love watching. It's just a delicious schadenfreude for an arrogant Steve Ballmer to laugh off the iPhone, right? And it's almost what brought Microsoft to its knees in the space until Steve Ballmer was out of there. But yeah, you don't want to be that executive who says, "Oh, I don't want to use email," and then they don't know how to use a computer. Well, then you're going to be, the world's going to pass you by. And this stuff is not going to be stopped. This is going to be so baked into the way we do things that if you refuse to get familiar and comfortable with them, to me, there's like a skill that you need to learn. Like you had to learn to use a computer if you were going to stay in the white collar world, basically, right? You couldn't say nah, computers not for me, email not for me. Good luck getting a job, in an executive role, in really any job if you refuse to use that kind of technology. And so this is one of those moments in time, and it's not the smartest, it's not the hardest working that survives. It's those who are most capable and able to adapt. Right. And so this is an adaptation moment, and we can control how much we adapt. It's not just a matter of whether or not we were born with longer beaks and we can pick out the food of the tree. And so we survive and the short beaked birds die off. Like we can choose to do the things we need to do to adapt to the new technology. And so, maybe if you position it as, hey, look, this is not, I'm not saying we need to incorporate this everywhere into our business today, but I'm saying we need to be familiar with it. Everybody needs to understand how it works, find ways for it to save time. The reality is, I can guarantee you that everyone in your company can probably save at least an hour a week using this, at least an hour a week. And that's in the most conservative estimates. Who wouldn't want that? Our company is always asking, how can we do things faster, more efficiently? And this is a tool that's really going to help us do that. On the job side, again, I think there's going to be displacement, but also job creation. And I think those who have built the skills, who understand the tools, and who have learned to adapt are going to be a lot more protected and have those opportunities on the back end of this. But if you refuse and you put your head in the sand, yeah, I just don't know how you're going to be really competitive in what you do, unless what you do is really devoid of this technology altogether. You go into a totally different line of work that doesn't use this. So those are my feelings.
I even think too, when you're thinking about credit unions in particular, right, and how member focused they are and focused on the experience of their customer, right, is AI is going to allow you all to deliver a significantly improved experience, right? I even think, from like a financial wellness perspective, if you are utilizing like data that you have across your entire data set to be able to recommend to people specific financial wellness improvement plans or other things like that really help people the way that I think most of our credit unions really want to, that's a really cool and unique thing that, yeah, this new technology might be intimidating, but if we can harness it appropriately, all of our values and all of the things that we hope to do in our community are better. And we're able to do it more efficiently. We're able to do it in a way that is tailored to them and what they want, right? So, I mean, yeah, it's both from the perspective of a business, but really too, from a values perspective, I think it does allow a much more customized experience. So
yeah, well said, Emily. I mean, it's and with how much these tools can do, it's almost like paralysis by analysis of like, oh, it could do all these things, and like, how do we incorporate blah, blah, blah. So don't try to do everything, just try to do something. If you try to just do something, that baby step is going to lead to bigger baby steps, and next thing you know, you'll be the one who can connect the dots to help your team, to help yourself, to help your credit union, and to help your members. So, all right, well, this was quite the overtime. We've never gone this deep. We've never gone this long. So many of you stuck around. I'm so glad you did. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Check out the recording that's going to come about. We're going to do another one of these soon. They're a lot of fun. There's just new information coming out every week. And we can't wait to share it all with you. In the meantime, hope you guys have a great rest of your week, a great Memorial Day, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks, Emily. Thanks, Caroline.
Thanks.
bye.